Hello and welcome to Pots and Trowels on a cool and blustery autumn day, and as promised last week I will be showing you later how to take hardwood cuttings from shrubs and fruit bushes. But to start with, we're in the vegetable garden where we're going to be cutting down the asparagus. One of my favourite vegetables is asparagus that we harvest from late spring and into early summer. The traditional time to stop cutting those lovely succulent juicy spears is the 21st of June, which is the longest day. After that we let all this lovely ferny foliage grow, and you can see it gets to 5 or 6 feet tall, and that's really essential to let that grow because it's building up the root system for next year. So if we don't allow it to grow, next year's spears will be thin and weak. So what we do now at this time of the year, instead of being a lovely green, it's going yellow. It's done its job for the year, so we're going to cut it down because otherwise it's just going to blow around over the winter and loosen the roots. So these are stems that would have been asparagus spears, but they've grown into the fern, and it is literally just a case, really simply, of chopping everything down to ground level and working the way along the bed and cutting it down. It's one of those lovely therapeutic jobs to do at this time of the year. You can't go wrong, and you can actually see where you've been. What just gets in your face, that's the trouble, it tickles. Sean, you ought to be doing this. I could do the camera for a change, and you could take the secateurs. So I'm going to work my way along the row and chop it all down.
Oh. It's going to take up a lot of space in the compost bin. Is it going to be all right? Have you got space?
Oh, I've got a little trick up my sleeve for you there. As you say, Sean, we've got masses and masses of growth. Now, it does rot down really well, but if we stick that all on our compost heap, it's just going to fill it very quickly. So what you need ideally is a shredder, an electric shredder, petrol one if you've got one, and just pass them through, and this will reduce all of this asparagus into this trug, and then we can add it to the compost heap. So you just feed it all in nicely like that. This is one of the shredders that grinds it, so it's a quiet one. You can't physically get your hand in, so it is totally safe to use this one. And it very, very quickly reduces a big pile of prunings into just a trug full that we can then add to the compost heap. So once it's gone through the shredder, you can see it's reduced it from this to this, really, really finely chopped, and that will rot down very quickly if we mix it in with other garden waste, leaves and things in the compost heap. But if you haven't got a shredder, or you can't get hold of one by hiring it or anything, then what you need to do is still reduce it. You don't have to chop it anywhere near as small as that, but just using a pair of secateurs, chop it into smaller sections, again, so that you can mix it in. So don't worry too much if you haven't got a shredder. So now we've got rid of it, what we need to do is just tidy through the bed. So it's just a case of very lightly forking through it, not too deep because we don't want to disturb the fleshy roots, which are quite close to the surface of the asparagus, so minimum disturbance. So once I've forked through this bed very lightly and got rid of all the weeds and just raked off the leaves to expose these stumps of the asparagus there, what I'm going to do then is mulch it. This is homemade compost out of our compost bin. This is from last year's leaves and all the garden waste, and look at that, that's absolutely wonderful. That's what homemade garden compost should be like. It's not too wet, too sticky, nice and crumbly, got a really good structure. And what I'm going to do is just put a mulch of that along the bed so that it improves the soil and it protects the roots a little bit over winter. And then next year when the spears grow, they'll push up through this lovely compost mulch. So I'll just finish off the asparagus bed and then we can go and look at some hardwood cuttings. Just shake this last bit on by hand, I think. There you go, that's it. Just wait now till next year till we get some lovely asparagus. Well, as promised, time to take hardwood cuttings, and this is a really easy way to propagate a wide range of deciduous shrubs, things like buddleias and deutzia and Philadelphus, even roses, and then we can do fruit bushes like blackcurrants, red currants and gooseberries. So if you've got them in your garden, or you've got a friend that's got some in the garden, you can pinch a few cuttings, now is the time to do it. And I always say that the cut-off point for doing them is really Christmas, because that gives the cuttings time to then make the roots in the spring before they've got to start growing. This is a deutzia here, this is a Philadelphus, this is a blackcurrant, and this is a sambucus, one of the ornamental elderberries. It's still got 1 or 2 leaves on, but that isn't a problem. But this is all 1 year's growth that's been made through the spring, summer of this year. And the reason we call them hardwood cuttings is simply because instead of it being soft and sappy, it's quite hard now. We would snap that if we tried to bend it. And it's those 1 year shoots that root the best. So the way to do it is very, very simple. We'll do it on this blackcurrant. This is the same for red currants as well, and all of them, to be fair. You want a sharp pair of secateurs, and we want cuttings about sort of 6 to 8 inches long. So we always make a straight cut just below a leaf bud with a nice sharp pair of secateurs. Some people use their secateurs as a guide. Above the top bud, we want a sloping cut so the water runs away like that. And that means the water will then run away from that bud. And it also means that if you put your cuttings down and get them mixed up, you know that the top is always the sloping cut, so you're not going to put them in upside down. So it really is as simple as that. So from that one piece, I'm getting 3 cuttings. And that is as simple as that. And that is the same with all the hardwood cuttings. Now, if it's a rose, pretty much the same. This is a piece of rose growth. We'd already cut them down by half a couple of weeks ago to stop them rocking about. And what I'm going to do is exactly the same, cut it just below a leaf there. I'm going to cut it a slope above that one, and then I'm actually going to snip the leaves off. They've been hanging on. Normally they will have fallen off by now. And the only thing I'm going to do different with that is using a sharp knife. It's a thing we called wounding, and because we've got to encourage roots, the roots are all going to grow from the base of the cutting, but we scrape off a little bit of that soft bark so that we wound it there, and that allows for more callus to develop, and that will increase the amount of root that grows on there. So when we've prepared our cutting, then we obviously got to put them in some compost or somewhere to root. So there's 2 ways you can do it. A very easy way is just to use some small plant pots with a free drained gritty compost in there, and what we're going to do is just push the cuttings in about half their depth to 2/3 down into the pot, making sure, of course, we get them the right way, pointy bit at the top.
Because I'm a bit ditzy, Mark, what happens if you put them upside down?
If you put them upside down, then they won't root. The roots will only ever grow from the bottom of the cutting, not the top. So if you put them in upside down, you're wasting your time, Sean. So push them in like that, stick a label in if you want to know the name of it. But the more traditional way of doing it is then to insert them into a piece of garden. So all you need to do is to fork some ground over just to loosen it up a little bit and break down any lumps, make it roughly level like that. And then when that's nice and friable, it's just simply a case of getting your prepared cuttings and pushing them at least half their depth into the ground. 1/2 to 2/3 is what we're aiming for. And then just leave them out there all the way through the winter, and they'll grow away next year. And with both ways, in the pots and the garden, they can be outside or in a cold frame. If they're in the garden, they're open to the elements. These are totally hardy, and what will happen is from the base of the cuttings, roots will develop in the latter part of winter and early spring, and then in mid-spring, these top 3 or 4 buds will grow to produce a new plant. And you leave them for a while to establish, and then we can take them out the pot, lift them out the garden, and plant them around the garden. So it's a great way to get some new plants for free for your garden. Well, thanks for watching, and hope you've enjoyed Pots and Trowels this week. And if you do like it, please like our page, go onto YouTube and Facebook and share it with all your friends so we can spread the word about gardening. And remember, we're going to be here all the way through the winter giving you weekly jobs. In fact, next week, we're going to be lifting the dahlias and storing them and doing just a little bit of pruning on top heavy plants.